Hello everyone, welcome back to the tactical analysis of the Euro Championships. We're going to have a look today at the big game between Germany and Portugal, which is going to be a really interesting tactical battle. Germany able to start to find their way in the final third? Can they have some presence in the final third? They lacked that against France. And what about Portugal? They struggled for quite a while to get into any sort of rhythm versus Hungary. They threatened in places, but I think the chemistry is not quite right in the final third, and they didn't really offer enough men forward. So will they change that today? So let's take a look at Germany first. So Germany opted for the 3-4-3 versus France, with Gosens and Kimmich dropping back to form a five at the back with Gundogan and Kroos just in front of them. They opted for three in the attacking line with Thomas Muller operating in his traditional way off the centre, with Gnabry as the focal point, but he was coming to the left as well, and Kai Havertz, who was just kind of floating around. And I think this is the problem. They're quite fluid, but at the same time, there's a real lack of chemistry and connection between the three of them. They haven't really found that formula, Germany, which is a bit of an issue, especially against France. They had a lot of the ball. They looked to control it and get into some good areas, but they were unable to really hurt France because they lacked something in this final third. So we'll take a look at that. Kimmich opts to get forward quite often and support the attack, so he will make plenty of underlaps. He also makes some overlaps too. Havertz will drop into this half space here quite often. He does it on both sides, actually, not just on the right, with Toni Kroos looking to conduct play and play the passes into these half spaces, into the wide areas and through the channels as well. So Kroos is key to this as he's the one who conducts the play. Gundogan likes to connect between the midfield and the attack, so you'll see him in these spaces here quite often, looking to get past that defensive shield and support and supply Muller, Gnabry and Havertz. But it's really Gosens on the other side who looks to really attack that flank and provide the width. Kimmich doesn't provide the width so much as he tends to make more underlaps, but Gosens will look to get out wide quite often and be quite aggressive and force errors in the defense of the opposition's team. Germany's crossing and ball play in the final third was lacking a little bit as well. They weren't really finding the right pass to hurt France. So it'd be interesting to see if they change that today, if they're able to get that more on point. At the back, Rudiger and Ginter tend to split, so you'll see Ginter in more of a right-back position. Rudiger doesn't go too far wide, but he does come inside quite a bit, actually, and support the midfield, with Hummels staying central. And Kroos will operate in these areas here. He tends to just sit and try to dictate rather than get into the final third. He may drop in here if the ball is in the penalty area, looking to find a position to shoot or provide, whereas Gundogan does a lot of work in these areas instead. Defensively, Rudiger, Hummels and Ginter look to get quite tight together, with Kimmich forming more of a right-back role. So Ginter will push across, Kimmich will come in here, Kroos and Gundogan will sit in front, and Gosens will look to just stop any wide play as well, with Muller, Gnabry and Havertz just kind of floating around and pressing whoever has the ball for the opposition. Portugal, on the other hand, have a bit more of a defensive structure to their play, so it's a little bit more rigid than Germany. Germany's is quite fluid and they like to pop up in different positions in the attack, whereas Portugal tend to be a little bit more rigid with their play. Ronaldo generally stays quite central. He will run the channels at times if there's space to do so, but he'll look to just get in the area and focus on finishing and applying that final touch to any move. Bernardo looks to get into these areas here and cut inside. So you'll see a lot of the time that he picks up the ball in these areas and puts some in-swinging crosses for Ronaldo or Jota, who's coming around the back. Jota doesn't really tend to do this on the opposite side. He's more focused on making movement into the penalty area to finish. However, we did see some nasty aspects between the pair of them, Ronaldo and Jota. Ronaldo was visibly frustrated that Jota was taking the ball himself and being a little bit selfish. So I think that's something that may cause a little bit of concern for the Portuguese coaching team. Jota likes to get in the channels as well, just like Ronaldo. He doesn't stay as central. He tends to make runs off the back of the attackers. Bruno Fernandes tends to arrive late into the penalty area. but he'll look to get into these areas here and try to dictate and try to find some balls over the top for Ronaldo and balls into the channels for Jota to chase. What we did see, however, is Portugal lacked numbers in attack versus Hungary. They tended to only really have 4 at times forward. None of William or Danilo get into these final third areas, so the extra bodies are provided by the fullback. So Semedo will get up here sometimes, and Guerreiro will look to get inside the penalty area rather than outside the left. The only problem is Portugal tended to not do this too often versus Hungary. They don't like to push both up at the same time. It tends to just be one at a time. So if Semedo's far and high up here, Guerreiro will just hang back to provide the defensive cover, because with Danilo and William and Diaz and Pepe, they're all very central. They lack the ability to really get back quickly and provide that defensive cover. So Guerreiro will stay back when Semedo goes forward and vice versa. So that's where the extra body comes from for Portugal. But when they're unable to do that, they will have problems, because 4 bodies around the penalty area tends to be a bit limited, especially with Germany having 3 centre-backs who are able to just control them a bit easier. And with Gosens and Kimmich dropping back here to form a 5, Portugal are going to need to offer more players in attack. Will they sacrifice one of William or Danilo? I'm not too sure if they're going to do that, because they need that defensive cover. So it'll be interesting to see if Santos decides to take out either William and put in somebody like Renato Sanchez, who's a bit better at linking the play between the midfield and the attack. He has more balance to his play rather than just defensive. But then again, his defensive play may be a cause for concern in terms of responding and recovering. So it'll be interesting to see if Santos decides to just stick with the 2 at the back. I think he probably will do. I don't think he'll change it up at this moment. So with Portugal playing 2 defensive midfielders, I think it's going to really set the tempo for the game, as I think Portugal are going to look to be quite secure in these areas here. With 3 attackers for Germany, Müller, Gnabry, Havertz, and lots of movement, Portugal are going to want to stay quite compact. They're not going to want to push any of these players up, which will allow Müller and Gnabry to isolate Diaz or Pepe on the other side. So I expect Portugal to play the 2 defensive midfielders to help out. William can just drop in here and help cover, preventing the ball from getting to Müller, whereas Danilo can drop in here as well and maybe just allow Pepe to man-mark Gnabry whilst he goes a bit more towards Havertz. Or perhaps Guerreiro will just drop in at times, and Semedo on the opposite side as well, and look to go 3 versus 3, allowing the other fullback to push on. But if Germany are able to get Gosens and Kimmich forward, I think this will cause a lot of problems for Portugal, because they're not able to transition as well. Somebody like Bruno Fernandes is going to need to come deeper for the ball. He's going to need to look to try to play the ball into the channels for Ronaldo and Jota. But again, at the other side, you're looking at 3 centre-backs covering Ronaldo and Jota. So Bernardo is going to look to try to operate in these areas to try to stretch the German defence and make Rudiger compromise his position, which will allow Ronaldo more space and able to isolate Hummels. One tactic that Portugal could opt for is have somebody like Danilo or William stick close to Toni Kroos and prevent him from playing any balls into these danger areas here. Just make him play the safer passes, with William pushing up on Gundogan, or Bruno as well. Bruno could maybe press Kroos, with Danilo and William just watching out for Gundogan's movement. So that will also be an option for them. So if Portugal want to mix things up, they may look to take out somebody like Jota and put in Joao Felix, who's a little bit better with the ball at his feet, and will actually look to try to link up with Ronaldo rather than try to turn towards goal and create chances. Another option for them, of course, is if they were to maybe play somebody like Rafa Silva, who came on in the game versus Hungary. Now, Rafa Silva is not as technically sound as somebody like Joao Felix. He doesn't have the same abilities, but what he does do is he provides lots of running and lots of movement. Now, this will help the likes of Ronaldo find more space. We saw in the game versus Hungary when Silva came on, he was making a lot of movement in these areas, dropping deep and coming into the area, which allowed Guerreiro to make some overlaps. This confused the Hungary defense, distracted them, and allowed Ronaldo, Bruno, Bernardo, and Guerreiro to get into some good spaces for the goal. Guerreiro's goal actually came from a deep run into the area, and that was caused by the movement. Whether that will disrupt the German defense remains to be seen. So what about Germany when they're in attack? I think you're going to see a lot of movement and triangular movement between three of Gundogan, Havertz and Kimmich on this side. So Havertz will look to drop in here, receive the pass. Kimmich will operate further forward and look to get in behind. And Gundogan may look to just get in the half space when Havertz drops in here. So you'll see a lot of movement between these three on this side. Once the ball is worked into these areas, Gnabry will be very central, but he does tend to peel off to the left a little bit, as his height is not really something that works in this situation. Whereas Thomas Muller likes to make runs around across the front and behind the last centre back. So this is something that Germany do quite often, and Thomas Muller's very good at making these deceptive movements where he just comes from nowhere and finds space. So that will be something Portugal need to be careful about, whether Danilo or William drop in and just run with him, allowing Diaz to cover the space. Will be interesting if they do that or not. Diaz likes to press aggressively, and so does Pepe, so that could be a problem in the transition. So Portugal's problem is going to be the transition. If they perform a low block, there's a good chance they'll shut out Germany, who lack the presence in the area to really cause them problems. But if Portugal are encouraged a bit too much and the likes of Pepe and Diaz push forward, that can be where Germany get their opportunities. Gnabry, as we know, is very quick and very direct. So he's going to look to get it between Pepe and Diaz and make those runs. Havertz will probably just drop off, look to receive the ball, which will allow somebody like Kimmich to get into them spaces. Gosens is obviously going to try to beat Semedo on that side. Whereas Muller's not the quickest, but he can support in a transition quite well, as his movement causes problems for the defense. So if Diaz gets too tight to somebody like Havertz in these situations, that will allow Gnabry to come into the space and isolate somebody like Pepe, and a one-on-one between them two, and I think Gnabry takes that. So this will be interesting, but then of course William and Danilo can just drop in and cover as well. As the game goes on, Germany may wish to add some more direct pace and dribbling ability into their play. Somebody like Sane, who can get into the wide left space and isolate defenders, but you could also play him off the right as well, as he's very adept at doing that. Him and Gnabry may be able to just stretch the defense of Portugal a bit better, but they still lack that presence in the centre. Timo Werner, of course, is an option as well. You could bring him on, but he lacks the prowess in front of goal, hasn't really had the best of seasons. But he is a bit more direct than the others and will tend to play a bit more centrally, which will allow somebody like Gnabry to come out to the right, and Thomas Muller can just play off Werner in this instance. Or they may wish to use somebody like Goretzka, put him into the middle, and then have somebody like Gnabry just play a little bit more central and allow the fullbacks to really push on, with Goretzka looking to connect with the attacking players. So a lot of things to think about for Joachim Low, and a lot of things to think about for Santos as they go into this contest. I'm expecting a really tense and tight game. I wouldn't be surprised if it finished 1-1 or 0-0. But I don't expect there to be too many goals. I think it's going to be quite tight. So tell me what you think. Do you think Germany can offer something different in the final third and start to really hurt teams there? Will they be able to find the right balance? What about Portugal as well? Does Jota need to be taken out the team? Do they need to bring in somebody like Rafa Silva who can make a bit more movement? Or do they need to look at somebody like João Felix, who's able to perform better on the ball and look to link up with Bernardo and Bruno? So tell me what you think. So thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos and hit that notification bell to be notified of more videos when I upload them. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Enjoy the game.